everyone. It's Senator Summers, and I'm here today with Bill Lucey, who is the Soundkeeper for the state of Connecticut, the Long Island Soundkeeper, and we are on the Terry Backer 2 today, and we are taking a small cruise this morning to show everybody the areas in which we are looking to possibly make a marine estuary, a national marine estuary along our sound here, along the coastline of Long Island Sound. So he's taking us on a little bit of a trip around some of the areas that would be included in this national marine estuary, and it's been very interesting to learn some of the things that we would be able to do should we get this designation. First of all, there's additional federal funding that would come into the state and give us an opportunity to study some of the effects of climate change, some of the different migrations that we've seen in species. So Bill is a wealth of knowledge, and maybe you could speak to us about some of the ideas or some of the things that under this NEERS we would be able to study with funding from the federal government. Bill.
Absolutely. Thanks, Heather. So we're cruising into Mumford Cove right now, and this is one of the core areas of the proposed reserve network. And what it is, it's a research reserve network, so this is a non-regulatory network. What it is it's steady funding for researchers and educators to take a really close look at what's going on in the marine environment, because estuaries are incredibly productive. And there's a lot of changes going on with climate. Species are changing. Everybody knows the black sea bass population has been on the rise. The lobsters have been on the decline. You know, what's going on with blue crab? What are some of the dangers to people who are out here trying to make a living off the sound? What are some of the advantages that may be coming? So what this does is it sets up long-term monitoring. Now, Yukon already has a long-term monitoring program with some of the buoys out in the Central Sound. Save the Sound does a lot of near-shore monitoring. We're in 40 bays and harbors. But what this does is it allows people to really focus on these questions. And for example, out in the West Coast, I was involved at one point with aquaculture in Alaska, and we had to buy our seed from down in Puget Sound in Washington, and the climates and upwelling were changing, and they did not realize that at these big hatcheries that produce a massive amount of seed for commercial growers, and the really low pH seawater was coming in, getting sucked into the intake of the hatcheries and killing all the spat. And it took them a while to figure out what the problem was, and then it's still taking them a while to figure out how to combat that. So for the growers in our region, they couldn't get spat. They were scrambling. They had to go out to Hawaii to get them. And if you have a long-term program that's looking at pH, they could have seen that coming. And then the hatchery could have been in position to deal with it. So that's one of the things that would happen here. We all know as climate change increases, the water could get more acidic. And acidic water will eat the membrane and the little shells of both copepods and larval shellfish.
We do our own sampling. I mean, Heather could tell you,
Yes.
Groton, Stonington, East Lyme, Waterford, and then us. You know, we work with the shellfish commissions. Like I take somebody with me or I have somebody monitor my thing when I go around, but we collect all those commissions, collect their samples and drive them down to Milford on their own dime. But if we were to have to rely on the state to come up here, run a boat, and do the number of adverse pollution condition samples that were required to maintain our classification, no friggin' way.
You'd be out of business.
So we picked up the ball, and honestly, it's such a routine now that it's actually cool. And what it has done, the upside is it's allowed us to sample when we want. So we have this chain of emails, right? Literally after half an inch of rain, bang. You got three commissions and us going, all right, what do we think about sampling? Want to do an APC? Whose turn is it to drive? Blah, blah, blah. And it actually gets it done better and on a more timely basis than the state would. But still, that's all us.
So right here we have a monitoring system on the end of a dock here in Noank, and Bill, the Soundkeeper, can certainly talk to us about how that monitoring system works and the benefit it provides. This one is actually monitoring the water quality.
Yeah, I would believe so. I see a USGS sticker on there, so I'm not sure. This one might actually also be its water quality, but measuring nutrients. So that's one of the big issues in the Sound is too much nitrogen coming down the rivers from septic tanks, sewage treatment plants. And so there's a Long Island Sound nitrogen action plan. And so we have a lot of policies we're trying to push, get the sewage treatment plants upgraded, use your fertilizer properly, just don't overload the system with too much fertilizer. And as those policies come into play, you have these monitoring stations that can tell if they're working. So if we're doing all this effort, spending a lot of money upgrading our waste treatment systems to benefit the water quality, which benefits oysters, no one wants to eat oysters out of dirty water, that's going to be logging data continuously. And to do that well, you have to clean those things. You have to clean the probes. You have to come out on a regular basis, download that data, and make sure everything's functioning properly, check that the readings are correct. So it's a lot of work. So monitoring is a very difficult thing to do well, and that's why having a NEER that's dedicated to that, they'll have technicians that specifically can deal with these long-term monitoring stations and fix them and attend to them. And again, everybody will have access to that information. So one of the activities that's being proposed for the NEER is what to do about the shoreline. You can see a lot of fortifications over there. Some have rocks, some don't. And one of the things that we like to look at is living shorelines. So how do you protect infrastructure from the rising seas and storm surge without necessarily putting up a wall where you end up losing the beach? So there's no public access to the beach. The sandpipers don't have anywhere to go to feed. The horseshoe crabs don't have a place to crawl out and breed. You need that beach, that intertidal zone. So there's a lot of methods that are out there being proposed, but it's a fairly new science. So the NEER is looking at setting up a bunch of different methods to how this might work, which ones will work, and that includes control. So if a site gains sand or loses sand, is that because of what the method was or just the natural fluctuation? So that's why you have controls, so you can tell if your experiment is having an effect or just Mother Nature. So that is something that we really need in Connecticut. There's all kinds of ideas, including building oyster reefs just offshore, so that behind the reef, the sand fills in, so you can actually extend those shoreline areas. So yeah, another great project we hope to see come out of the NEER system.
The status of being able to claim this as a natural and national marine estuary, which would entitle the state of Connecticut to be able to obtain some federal dollars for many, many good reasons for research, whether it has to do with climate change, species migration. We were able to speak to somebody who were actually working the waters here today when we were out on the Terry Backer 2. And they're all in support of this. It's, the more information and knowledge that we have and data that we collect, the better decisions that we can make for their continued success, and also for the continued success of having clean water for all of us to enjoy here, and to make sure that we make the right decisions at the state level to maintain the species that we have and are able to react in a positive way if we see things go in a direction that we are not comfortable with. So I hope that you have enjoyed today and listening to some of us, and I want to thank our soundkeeper, Bill Lucey, for giving us this tour, and I'm hoping that you have enjoyed being able to see some of the beautiful shoreline that would be included in this designation of the National Marine Estuary.